My name is Amina, and this past Christmas was supposed to be just like every other, quiet, polite, and a little lonely, if I'm being honest. But this time, it turned out to be the moment I reclaimed everything they thought I'd lost, including my dignity. It started like this. I was invited, like always, to my son Kamal and his wife Tara's big holiday dinner. They've hosted for the past 5 years, in their polished home in the suburbs, white marble counters, glittering lights strung on every corner, the scent of cinnamon sugar candles covering up the coldness in the air. I showed up 10 minutes early, with my homemade saffron rice and pistachio cookies in hand, just like I do every year. No one offered to take the dish from me. No one helped me take off my coat. Tara just gave me one of her tight-lipped smiles and said, "You made it." Not, "I'm glad you're here," just, "You made it." I was seated at the far end of the table, next to the back patio door. The cold draft kept brushing against my ankles, but I didn't complain. I never do. I watched as Tara floated from one guest to another, laughing, pouring wine, making sure everyone else was warm, full, and entertained. Everyone except me. But I kept a polite smile on my face, because that's what I've always done. I've been alone for nearly 7 years since my husband passed. Kamal and I were close once, back when he was younger. But things changed after he married Tara. She never liked the way I dressed, or the way I insisted on speaking Urdu with my granddaughter, Zoya, and Kamal. Well, Kamal just followed her lead. Dinner was fine if a little loud. I quietly passed dishes, took small bites, and listened to everyone talk over each other. Zoya, sweet as ever, leaned over once to whisper, "Your cookies are my favorite part, Nani." That moment warmed something in me. Then came the part that changed everything. Tara stood up with her wine glass and clapped her hands. "Okay, everyone. Gift time," she chirped. "We went a little overboard this year, but you all deserve it." I watched, heart trying not to expect anything, as Kamal and Tara handed out shiny gift bags. Her parents got a weekend spa retreat. Her brother received an expensive watch. Zoya got the latest tablet and a whole art kit. Even Kamal's coworker, who I barely knew, was handed a gift card to some steakhouse downtown. They moved around the room, laughing, taking photos, hugs exchanged after every gift. I waited. Surely, they hadn't forgotten me. I had raised Kamal alone for most of his life after his father's accident. I taught him how to budget, how to write scholarship essays, how to cook his first meal. Finally, the last gift was handed out. Tara sat down. Kamal raised his glass. "Merry Christmas, everyone." That was it. I looked around. No one said anything. Not even Zoya. My hands were folded tightly in my lap, gripping each other to stop them from shaking. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to cry. Tara turned to me then, smiling like she hadn't noticed. "Oh, Amina, we didn't know what you'd want. You never ask for anything. You're so simple." She gave a soft shrug, like that somehow made it okay. I could feel everyone watching. Her family looked awkward. Kamal avoided my eyes. I swallowed hard and nodded. Yes, I suppose I am simple. But inside, something broke. That night, after dessert was served and dishes were cleared, people started leaving. I stayed seated for a moment longer, watching as Kamal laughed with Tara's parents. In the hallway, my coat was still hanging in the entryway. No one had brought it over. Zoya came over and sat next to me. "I'm sorry, Nani," she whispered. "They should have done something for you." She leaned in and hugged me tightly. It was that hug that gave me the courage to do what I did next. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small envelope I had prepared. I slid it into Zoya's hand. "For you," I said gently. "Your favorite bookstore. Use it on something just for fun." Her eyes lit up. "You didn't have to. I wanted to." She tucked it into her hoodie with a quiet smile. Then we carried my dish back to the kitchen together. That's when Tara reappeared, blinking in surprise. "You're really leaving already?" I nodded. "Yes. I have my own traditions back home. My readers are waiting." Kamal turned, confused. "Readers?" I didn't answer him. I just smiled softly and said, "Thank you for having me." Then I walked out the front door, alone, rolling my suitcase behind me. The air outside was crisp and clean. Like a fresh page waiting to be written on. What Kamal and Tara didn't know, what they had never bothered to ask, is that I've been quietly running one of the fastest growing lifestyle newsletters for women over 50 for the past 2 years. I have over 80,000 subscribers. I write about food, family, grief, and rebirth. Brands partner with me. Women email me from all over the country. I built it all quietly, while they forgot me. But soon, they were going to remember. The day after Christmas, I poured myself a cup of chai, opened my laptop, and watched the subscriber count tick upward, minus 80,005, 80,006. I hadn't planned on revenge. That's not the kind of woman I am. But I was tired of being invisible. Tired of being the one who sacrificed, who stayed silent, who made room for everyone else's comfort, and was forgotten in return. So I made a quiet decision. I began writing a new article for my newsletter. The title, "The Empty Chair at Christmas, When Your Children Forget You're Still Alive." It wasn't bitter. I wasn't cruel. I just told the truth about what it feels like to sit at the end of a long table, full of people you once held in your arms, and realize you've become decorative, background, an afterthought. I clicked publish before I could second-guess myself. By the time I made lunch, it had over 5,000 views. By dinner, it had gone viral. Messages started pouring in. Women from all over the world wrote me, saying they felt the same way. One woman said she hadn't spoken to her daughter in 3 years. Another said she spent the holidays with her cats because at least they still looked happy to see her. I read each message with a lump in my throat. I hadn't known so many of us were suffering in silence. That week, I was interviewed on a local podcast, then a national one. Then a small magazine reached out for a feature. My editor called me 2 days later. "You might want to consider putting a face to your name, Amina," she said gently. "Your story is resonating. They want to know you, not just your words." I hesitated. I had always written anonymously, signing my work only as the Cinnamon Widow, a name I'd chosen after my husband passed. But maybe it was time to step into the light, so I agreed to an interview. We did a photo shoot in my garden, me in my softest green shawl, holding a teacup, smiling without apology. It felt good. Meanwhile, Kamal and Tara hadn't said a word. Not even a thank you for the cookies. I wasn't surprised. But Zoya did text me. "Nani, I read your story. It made me cry." "I had no idea," I replied. "It's not your fault, Mary Yan." She asked if she could come visit. I said yes. When she showed up on New Year's Day with a notebook and a pen, I smiled. "What's that for?" "I want to interview you, Nani," she said, "for my school project. I want to tell your story." She asked me questions about my childhood in Karachi, about how I met her grandfather, how I learned to cook without measuring anything, how I started writing in my journals after he died. She listened with her eyes wide and her heart open. It was the first time in years that I felt truly seen. The next week, I received a call from a lifestyle brand offering a major sponsorship. They wanted me to curate a holiday gift box inspired by the Cinnamon Widow. They wanted saffron spice, handwritten recipes, soft shawls, journals for older women. They wanted my voice, not muted or reshaped or translated. The check they offered had more zeros than I'd ever seen. I accepted. Quietly. I didn't tell Kamal. But one afternoon, Tara texted me out of nowhere. Tara, hi Amina. Just wanted to check in. How's your week going? I stared at the message. The last time she texted me was to ask if I could babysit during a last-minute wine trip. I didn't respond right away. Then Kamal called. Amy, he said. Using the word like he was trying to reclaim it, Zoya said, you've been writing. And that it's getting attention. I kept my voice steady. Yes, it's been healing for me. He cleared his throat. That's good. Maybe we could meet up sometime. Just us. I knew what was happening. They'd seen the interviews. They'd read the articles. Maybe even recognized themselves in the stories. But it wasn't time to confront them yet. Not until I was ready. I'm quite busy right now, Kamal, I said kindly. But I'll let you know when things slow down. There was silence. Then he said, okay, sure. After I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just smiled. Slowly, softly, because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for them to give me a seat at the table. I had built my own. February came, with soft rain, and full inboxes. My article had been translated into 6 languages. A women's rights nonprofit invited me to speak at a virtual summit. An editor from a major publishing house sent a message that made me pause mid-sip of tea. Have you ever considered writing a memoir? We'd love to discuss a book deal. A memoir. I stared at the email. Then I thought of the boxers in my attic, journals stacked with years of observations, emotions I never voiced, and letters I never sent. Maybe this was my chance to make sense of it all, and to help other women feel seen. That night, I said, Bismillah, opened a fresh document, and began writing the truth. But life, of course, doesn't pause for dreams. One Friday morning, while I was in the middle of outlining chapters, I heard the doorbell. It was Kamal and Tara. Unannounced, I opened the door, surprised. Tara wore a sheepish smile, while Kamal shifted on his feet. Amy, he said, looking uncomfortable. We were just driving by and thought we'd stop in. I didn't believe that for a second. My home isn't on anyone's way to anywhere. Still, I stepped aside. You're welcome. They sat awkwardly in the living room while I poured tea. Tara complimented my curtains. Kamal asked how the writing thing was going. I gave them polite, brief answers. Then Tara said it. I saw your article on Instagram. The one about the Christmas dinner. It was powerful. I nodded. Thank you. It just caught us off guard, she added quickly. I mean, we didn't mean to make you feel excluded. Things have just been hectic. We're not always the best with gifts. Kamal jumped in. Yeah, Amy, it wasn't intentional. We love you. Zoya loves you. I studied their faces. Were they sorry for what they did, or just sorry that the world now knew about it? It's not about the gifts, I said calmly. It's about consideration. About remembering the people who raised you, who fed you when you cried, who held you when you were sick. Kamal's eyes dropped. I suppose we've been busy. He muttered. We're all busy, I replied. But the people who matter, We make time for them. Silence stretched between us. Tara glanced around the living room. You've redecorated. No, I said. You just haven't been here. In 2 years. Her face flushed. Well, we'd love to have you over soon. Maybe dinner. I gave a soft smile. We'll see. I wasn't cruel. I didn't yell or cry. I simply set a boundary. One that had been missing for years. After they left, I sat on the couch and took a deep breath. Then Zoya called Nani. She said excitedly, "My teacher loved my project on you. She said you should come talk to our class." I chuckled. Oh, did she? She said most of the girls in class don't have grandmothers who've done TED Talks and built a writing career in their 60s. I haven't done a TED Talk. I laughed. Yet, Zoya said confidently. Her belief in me warmed my heart in places that had gone cold. Later that week, I received a box in the mail. Inside was a gold fountain pen and a handwritten note from the publisher. Your voice matters. We're honored to help share it. I held the pen delicately. It reminded me of the ones my late husband used to gift me every Eid, always saying, "You were born to write, Amina." I whispered a silent thank you to the universe. Then I returned to my manuscript. Chapter 7. The day they remembered my name, I wrote about the way Kamal used to bring me dandelions as a boy. About how Tara once cried in my kitchen when she had her first miscarriage. How I held her and didn't let go until she stopped shaking. I wrote about love, about grief, about dignity, and how sometimes, even when people forget what you gave them, you still give yourself the gift of healing. The book deal was finalized by March. Advance payment deposited. Editor assigned. Cover design in progress. But the most important thing wasn't the money or the acclaim. It was the feeling of finally, truly owning my story, not begging for space in someone else's life, but building my own legacy. The day my book was published, there were no fireworks, no balloons, no big celebration, but I didn't need any. Instead, I sat alone in my reading chair, sunlight spilling over the cover. My name, Amina Rahman, etched in bold, graceful lettering. The title, The Room They Forgot, A Mother's Story. I closed my eyes and let the moment settle deep in my bones. All those years of being overlooked, they didn't define me anymore. My story was finally mine. The first week, the book quietly climbed bestseller lists. Emails from readers around the world began pouring in. Some wrote about their mothers. Some wrote about their regrets. Some simply said, "Thank you for giving voice to what they had always felt, but never said aloud." And then one day, Kamal showed up again. This time, he brought Zoya. "Hi, Nani." Zoya ran to hug me. She held a copy of my book in her arms. "You signed my copy at school, but I want one just from you." I smiled and took the book. I wrote, "To Zoya, always remember your voice matters. Love, Nani." She beamed when she left. To play in the garden, Kamal stayed behind. There was an awkward silence. Then he cleared his throat. "I read it," he said softly. I didn't ask what he meant. "I knew," he continued. "I didn't realize how far I'd drifted, how much I took for granted." His voice cracked. "I was so caught up in success, appearances. I forgot who taught me kindness, who built the foundation under my feet." I looked at my son, a man who had once fit in the crook of my arm. "I didn't write it to shame you," I said gently. "I wrote it to free myself." He nodded. "I know." There was a long pause, then he added, "I'm proud of you, Amy." Truly, I believed him, but I didn't jump up to embrace him. I didn't offer tea or sweep everything under the rug. I simply nodded and said, Thank you. Because healing isn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes, it's just about standing your ground and letting the other person rise to meet you. Later that evening, I sat in my study and lit a candle. Across the room, dozens of books, mine, sat in boxes ready to ship for charity events and women's shelters. And I thought, they forgot to give me a gift that Christmas, so I gave myself something better, a legacy, a voice, a quiet, undeniable place in the world that no one could take from me again, and that was the most priceless gift of all. Months passed, the headlines faded, the whispers quieted, but I stayed standing, not as someone's mother, or someone's forgotten relative, but as Amina Rahman, the woman who built a life quietly, fiercely, and with a kind of resilience no one could see until I showed it. The book had done more than sell copies. It had opened doors. Community centers called, asking me to speak to women who had spent their lives putting others first. Universities invited me to lecture on generational silence, on motherhood, on finding one's identity after being reduced. 2 roles. At one event, I saw a young woman crying in the front row. Afterward, she told me, "My mother read your book. She left a controlling marriage the next week," she said. If Amina can find herself again at 65, so can I. I held her hand and smiled. That moment meant more than any royalty check. Back home, things were different. Kamal visited more often, though sometimes he didn't know what to say. Tara stayed quiet, cautious. And I let it be. I no longer begged for their attention. I no longer measured my worth by their presence. Zoya, though, she came every week. "Nani, can I help you with the new chapter?" she'd ask, climbing into my writing chair. I taught her how to write, how to edit, how to own her thoughts. One day, she said, "You're my real hero, Nani, not because of the book. Because you didn't let them turn you invisible." I hugged her tightly, tears in my eyes. Then came the next Christmas. This time, I hosted it at my house. I decorated the table with handwritten place cards. Each one had a note tucked underneath, reminding the person of a moment they had been truly kind, including Kamal and Tara. Because forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's choosing to carry forward only what strengthens you. As the evening wore on, Kamal stood up and raised a toast. "To my mother," he said, voice trembling. "The woman I took for granted, the author I'm now humbled by, and the matriarch who showed us all what strength really looks like." He looked at me. "Thank you for not giving up on yourself. Or on us." Everyone clapped. I nodded politely. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Because for once, I wasn't waiting to be seen. I had already made sure I would never be forgotten again. After dinner, Zoya and I sat on the porch, watching the stars. She leaned on my shoulder and whispered, "Next year, I want to write my own story." I smiled and kissed her forehead. "That," I said, "would be the greatest sequel of all." There's a room in my house that used to be closed for years. Not locked, just forgotten. It was the guest room, once. Then a storage room. Eventually, it just held boxes of things I couldn't throw away. Old letters, photographs, my wedding. Sorry, Kamal's childhood toys, Tara's forgotten birthday cards. For a long time, I couldn't bear to open it. It felt like stepping into everything I had lost: connection, youth, visibility. But after my book was published, after the silence had finally been broken, I opened that room again, and something changed. I didn't see a graveyard of memories anymore. I saw raw material, stories waiting to be told, moments worth remembering. Even pain that had turned to wisdom. So I cleared the room, not to erase the past, but to make space for what came next. I put in a large wooden desk, the kind I'd always dreamed of but never let myself buy. Shelves lined the walls now, filled with journals, drafts, letters from readers around the world. In the corner stood an easel where Zoya painted when she visited. A soft armchair faced the window, perfect for thinking, or just being. I called it my becoming room, because that's what it was. A space where the woman I used to be could sit beside the woman I've become, both of us whole, both of us finally seen. Some nights, I light a candle and sit there with my tea, listening to the soft hum of the city outside. Not lonely, not bitter, just peaceful. Recently, Zoya asked if she could interview me for a school project. About your life before you became famous, she teased. I told her, there was no before, my love. I've always been this person. It just took the world a while to catch up. She nodded thoughtfully. That's what I want, Nani. To never need someone else to validate me before I believe in myself. I looked at her, pride blooming deep in my chest. You already have what took me 60 years to reclaim. This isn't a story of revenge, or even a dramatic transformation. It's a story of return to self, to dignity, to quiet power. I didn't need to punish anyone to find peace. I just needed to stop waiting for permission to shine, and now, every Christmas, every birthday, every ordinary Tuesday, I sit at the center of my own life. Not out of arrogance, but because I finally remembered something I'd long forgotten. I was never invisible. I just stopped looking in the mirror. I walked through the bookstore the other day, not to check on my book, not to see if anyone recognized me. Just for myself. The shelves used to intimidate me. Rows upon rows of names, voices, stories, all louder than mine. But now, I pass them with quiet pride, knowing mine is up there too. Not because I fought for the spotlight, but because I finally stopped shrinking in the shadows. And now, I write not for revenge, not for recognition, but because I can. Zoya called last night. She had been accepted into the university's writing program. I wrote about you in my application, Nani, she said. That choked me up more than any review ever could. You didn't just raise me, she added. You showed me how to raise myself. I sat in silence, overwhelmed. How strange. I spent so many years wondering if I mattered. And now, here I was, shaping futures without even trying. Kamal came by the next morning, alone. No Tara, no performance. Just a son sitting across from his mother, holding a cup of chai with slightly trembling hands. I read the book again, he said. This time, slower. I nodded. I wish I had seen you then. I wish I had asked. I looked at him, not as the boy I raised, or the man who forgot me, but as a human trying to grow. I used to think being your mother meant giving everything, until there was nothing left. I told him. Now I know, love doesn't mean erasing yourself. He looked down, ashamed. I reached across the table, and gently touched his hand. I'm not angry anymore, Kamal, but I won't go back to who I was either. He nodded slowly. I don't want you to. The next Christmas, I didn't host a big dinner, no elaborate table, no place cards, just Zoya and me, eating takeout on the living room floor, laughing about how I once thought giving a gift meant wrapping myself up and handing me over. Now, I gave differently, in stories, in presence, in wisdom, not in sacrifice. She handed me a small box. Inside was a delicate silver necklace, the pendant, a tiny quill, and a tiny mirror. "Because you taught me to write," she said, "and to always look at myself, not through others' eyes, but my own." Tears fell before I could stop them. Not from sadness, but from a quiet, powerful truth settling in my bones. I had always been enough. They just weren't ready to see it. But now, I see it, and I'll never forget again.